So can Powell, Jay Powell is the head of the Fed, U.S. Fed, can he stop inflation?
Well, he can if he increases interest rates high enough. And all hell broke out 2 weeks ago when Powell put out the Fed's new projections for how high they would increase interest rates. In June, they said that interest rates would be 3.4% at the end of this year. 3 months later, in September, 2 weeks ago, they said they're going to be not 3.4%, but 4.4%. And by the end of next year, he said they'll be 4.6%. So this was a radical adjustment upward in their projections for how high they're going to increase interest rates just over the next few months. And afterwards, that caused a big sell-off in the stock market. The dollar got a lot stronger. That caused problems for the UK pound, and all hell broke loose in the financial markets. And on top of that, not only are they hiking interest rates, but at the same time, they're reversing quantitative easing. Instead of creating money, they're now destroying $95 billion every month.
This is the U.S. Fed. This is the U.S. Fed's doing this.
That's right. The Fed is destroying $95 billion a month. Multiply that times 12 months, and that's going to be $1.1 trillion that don't exist 1 year from now that exist today. That's about 13% of all the dollars. As long as the Fed is carrying out quantitative tightening or destroying dollars like that, it's very likely that asset prices are going to keep falling because all of the asset prices are floating on this ocean of liquidity that the Fed is now draining. So it's like a bathtub. The bathtub is being drained of water and all the asset prices are going down. It's not going to stop until the Fed stops.
So let me explain what that means to Mrs. Micro. That means that their real estate is going to come down because there's fewer buyers. I was at a major bank yesterday. The bank was empty. You know why it was empty? Because they don't need loan officers. The biggest layoffs are coming in the banks right now because banks cannot loan money because people cannot afford to borrow. That was just yesterday. So that's micro.
So since the Fed is draining this liquidity on such an aggressive scale and hiking interest rates, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate is now moved up to 6.7%. All of the asset classes are likely to fall together. In the past, it didn't work like that. Stocks would go up and bonds would go down and vice versa. But today, they all move up and down together because they're all floating on this ocean of liquidity that the Fed is now draining. So as long as the Fed keeps draining liquidity through quantitative tightening, all of the asset classes are likely to fall together. Times like these are not times to look to make a great deal of money. This might be a good time to start thinking about improving your business, creating your own business, getting into business for yourself, something you can control, building up your own business and worrying less about speculating in speculative assets in the hope that they'll go higher in the near term because they're probably going lower.
So
there will be a day when things turn around. Last year, I was very bullish on the stock market because the Fed was creating $120 billion every month and pumping it into the markets. And as long as that carried on, it was clear asset prices would probably keep moving higher. At least I thought so. But now the reverse is happening. So it's not at all surprising that the stock markets are down between 20 and 30% so far this year. They probably have significantly further to fall. Property prices are probably going to start falling at a double-digit rate by the middle of next year. And things are not going to turn around for a while.
And the reason that's important is because, you know, I said in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, your house is not an asset. That was 25 years ago this year. And for many of the middle class, or the boomers of my generation, their house is their biggest asset they have. And I said, it's not. And today they're crashing. And their housing price, their 401k is probably crashing. And how does quantitative tightening or stopping printing money affect bonds? Because bond markets are the biggest markets around.
Right. So if they just stop printing, then things would more or less be level. But they not only stop printing, but they're actually destroying money now. Instead of printing money, you can say they're unprinting money at the rate of $95 billion a month. And when they do that, what they do is they have these bonds that the government has issued. When they mature, the Fed takes the money from the government and then the government has to get money from somewhere else, from the public, and that reduces the amount of money that exists in the economy. So with less money, that pushes up interest rates. That makes the bond prices go down and the interest rates, the bond yields go up. So quantitative tightening is another way of tightening monetary policy and pushing up interest rates and making it more expensive for people to borrow and consume, or borrow and invest.
So let me keep it really simple. If I have a bond that was paying 5%, but the new bond is 8%, what does that do for the value of the bond? The old bond.
And so it pushes it down,
right?
Because no one is going to want to own the bond that's yielding 5% if the new bonds they can buy yielding 8%. So it causes the price of the old bond to fall until its equivalent yield comes into line. If it falls enough, then the yield would be 8% on that bond as well.
And see, let me explain why what Richard is saying is so important. Is because Wall Street for years has been selling 60-40. 60% equity, 40% bonds, and they're all dropping. It's all dropping right now. The reason this is important, because we're crashing, like it or not. I'm a Marine pilot. I went down 3 times. And the question is not if you're going to crash. The question is, will you survive the crash? And that's what I loved about the Marine Corps. We practice crashing every single day. And so when the 3 times it happened in Vietnam, we survived. Not the question, are we going to crash? We are crashing. Question, are you going to survive? And I said, micro is you got your head up your butt, and that's where most Americans are. Or people I meet, oh, don't worry, the Fed's got my back. The Fed will save the stock market. Oh, don't worry, my pension is safe and all this. But if you've read most of my books, like Who Stole My Pension and Prophecy and all that stuff, this is this book here, Rich Dad's Prophecy. And it says why the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. Well, it's here, sports fans. I published this book in 2013 just to have an artifact to prove I knew what I was talking about, but how you can prepare yourself and profit from it. So today, I'm making more money hand over fist, but unfortunately the rest of the world's going broke. Like I went to school, my background is oil. I drove oil tankers for Standard Oil. And so today I own oil wells. I don't own oil stocks. And when Biden cut off the Exxon, the Keystone XL pipeline in 2000, the first act he did was the act of sabotage. What Biden did, in my opinion, I was selling oil at $30 a barrel. Immediately when he cut that off, it went to $130 a barrel. Meanwhile, the middle class and poor got poorer, and guys like me got richer. And that's what I mean about Rich Dad's Prophecy. If you prepare, you'll come out okay. But you got your micro watch and you got your head up your butt thinking, oh, the Fed's going to save me. America's the greatest. I don't have to worry. I got a pension. I got a 401k. I'll take laps around the rosary beads tonight.